The first time Kellen Harrow saw her, she was standing at the edge of the harvest festival with a basket of apples that nobody would buy, and he thought she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life. The other villagers gave her a wide berth, mothers pulling their children closer when they wandered too near, men making signs against evil behind their backs. Kellen watched as a young couple approached her stall, drawn perhaps by the perfect red fruit displayed so carefully, only to freeze when they saw her green skin and the small tusks that curved gently from her lower jaw. They hurried away without a word. She did not react. Her face remained calm, dignified, though Kellen saw the way her fingers tightened slightly on the basket handle. She had braided her dark hair back from her face, revealing the pointed tips of her ears, and she wore a simple homespun dress that she had clearly made herself. Everything about her spoke of careful effort, of someone trying desperately to belong in a place that would not have her. Kellen had returned to Millbrook 3 months ago after serving in the border wars, his left leg stiff from an old wound that still ached when it rained. He had bought a small farm on the outskirts of the village with his military pay, seeking peace and solitude after too many years of violence. He had seen enough of war, enough of hatred, enough of drawing lines between people and calling them enemies. He made his way through the festival crowd, ignoring the curious glances from neighbors who still considered him a newcomer despite having grown up here. He stopped in front of her stall. "How much for the apples?" he asked. She looked up at him with eyes the color of amber, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her face before she schooled it back to careful neutrality. "2 coppers for 3. That is a very fair price." He dug into his pocket, counting out the coins. Her apples were larger and more flawless than any others at the festival. "You grow these yourself?" "I have an orchard north of here in the borderlands." Her voice was low and musical, tinged with an accent he could not quite place. "The soil there is good, rocky but good. I know those lands. I passed through them on my way back from the war." He selected 3 apples, noting the way she carefully did not let their fingers touch when she took his coins. "I am Kellen Harrow. I have the old Greaves farm just west of the village. I know who you are." She hesitated, then added, "I am Lyra Vornath." "Lyra." He tested the name, liking the sound of it. "Well, Lyra Vornath, I think these are the finest apples I have seen in years." She stared at him as though he had spoken in a foreign tongue. Behind him, Kellen heard muttering, felt the weight of disapproving stares. Old Brennan, the blacksmith, said something about orc lovers, just loud enough to be heard. Kellen bit into one of the apples without looking away from her. The flesh was crisp and sweet, the taste of late summer sunshine. "Delicious. I will be sure to tell everyone." "You should not," Lyra said quietly. "It will not help you here. I have never much cared what people think of me." He smiled at her, noting the way color rose in her green cheeks. "Would you be willing to sell me more? I could use some good fruit for preserves before winter sets in." She glanced around at the festival, at the empty space surrounding her stall like a moat. "Yes, I would be willing." They arranged for him to visit her orchard the following week. As Kellen walked away, he felt lighter than he had in months, though he could not quite say why. Behind him, the muttering grew louder, but he found he did not care. He had seen Lyra's eyes light up when he praised her apples, had watched her shoulders straighten with pride, and that small moment of joy he had given her felt more worthwhile than any amount of his neighbor's approval. The road to Lyra's orchard was rougher than he remembered, overgrown with brambles and rutted from years of neglect. His leg protested the uneven ground, but Kellen pushed on, curious now about how she managed out here alone. The borderlands had been emptied during the war, farms abandoned when the fighting drew too close. That she had stayed, or perhaps claimed one of the abandoned holdings, spoke to either courage or desperation. Probably both, he thought. The orchard appeared suddenly as he crested a small rise. Rows of apple trees spread across a hillside, their branches heavy with fruit. Beyond them stood a stone cottage with a newly thatched roof and a garden bursting with late vegetables. Everything was immaculate, obviously tended with great care. Lyra emerged from the cottage as he approached. She wore practical work clothes today, her sleeves rolled up to reveal the corded muscle of her forearms. Kellen noticed old scars on her hands, the marks of hard labor and harder years. "You came," she said, and there was surprise in her voice. "I said I would." She studied him for a long moment, as though trying to understand what trick he might be playing. Then she nodded slowly. "The apples you want are in the far orchard. The trees there bore especially well this year." They walked together through the rows, and Kellen asked questions about her cultivation methods, her choices of which trees to prune and which to let grow wild. Lyra answered at first with careful brevity, but as she realized his interest was genuine, she began to speak more freely. Her knowledge was extensive, hard-won through trial and error. "I was 12 when my clan was driven from our mountain holds," she said as they filled baskets with fruit. "We scattered. Some went further north, beyond human lands. Others tried to integrate into human society." Her mouth twisted. "That did not go well for most. I was 16 when I found this place abandoned and claimed it. That was 6 years ago. 6 years alone out here." Kellen set down a full basket and started on another. "That is a long time. I am used to being alone." She reached up to pluck an apple from a high branch, her movements graceful despite her strength. "It is safer than being with those who wish you harm. Has anyone from the village given you trouble?" "Not directly. They make it clear I am not welcome, but they do not come out here to bother me. I think they hope I will simply leave." She paused, then added quietly, "Sometimes I consider it, but this is my home. I built it with my own hands. Why should I be driven away again?" The question was not really for him, but Kellen answered anyway. "You should not. This is good land, and you have made something beautiful here." She looked at him then, really looked at him, her amber eyes searching his face. "Why are you kind to me? Everyone else in Millbrook treats me like a monster they tolerate out of fear of violating some law." Kellen considered his answer carefully. "I spent 5 years fighting in the border wars. I killed orcs. They killed my friends, but you know what I learned? The ones I killed were no different from me. They were following orders, protecting their homes, believing what their leaders told them about humans being the enemy." He met her gaze steadily. "The real monsters were the ones on both sides who wanted the war in the first place. You grow apples and tend a garden. I see no monster here." Lyra turned away abruptly, but not before he saw the shine of tears in her eyes. She busied herself with checking the apples already in the baskets, her shoulders tense. When she spoke again, her voice was thick. "No one has spoken to me like that in 6 years. Like I am a person." "You are a person, Lyra, and a damn fine orchardist too." She laughed then, a surprised sound that seemed to shock even her. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Would you like to stay for midday meal? It is the least I can offer since you came all this way." "I would like that very much." They ate simple food in her cottage, bread and cheese and cold chicken, with apple cider she had pressed herself. Lyra's home was small but comfortable, everything in its place, with dried herbs hanging from the rafters and books stacked carefully on a shelf made from salvaged wood. She caught him looking at the books and said, almost defensively, "I taught myself to read. From a primer I found in the ruins of the old farm. That is impressive. I wanted to know things, to understand the world beyond what my clan taught me." She poured him more cider. "They would say I have become too human, but I think I am simply myself." They talked through the afternoon, and Kellen found himself relaxing in a way he had not since returning from the war. Lyra was intelligent and curious, asking him about his life, his time in the military, his plans for his farm. She listened intently, sometimes asking follow-up questions that showed she was truly considering his words. When he finally rose to leave, the sun was low on the horizon. He had bought far more apples than he actually needed, but he found he did not regret it. Lyra walked him to the edge of her property. "Will you come back?" she asked, the question almost shy. "If you would welcome me, I would." As Kellen made his way home in the gathering dusk, he realized he was smiling. His leg ached from the long day of walking, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He returned to the orchard 3 days later with a gift of honey from his own hives and an offer to help with the apple harvest in exchange for cider. Lyra accepted both with obvious pleasure. They worked together through the morning, and Kellen was impressed by her strength and stamina. She could lift baskets that would have made him struggle, moving through the trees with efficient grace. "You must have been formidable in your youth," he said, then immediately regretted the phrasing. She was barely 22, hardly old, but Lyra smiled. "I was trained as a warrior before my clan scattered. All orc children are. We learn to fight before we learn to read, and since I never learned to read as a child..." She shrugged. "I have not practiced in years, though. There is no one to fight here, and I prefer it that way. Yet you remember the training. Some things you do not forget." They fell into an easy rhythm, filling basket after basket with fruit. Kellen found excuses to return over the following weeks, helping with the harvest, repairing a broken fence, checking her cottage roof for leaks before winter. Each visit revealed more of Lyra's character, her dry sense of humor, her love of growing things, her loneliness that she tried so hard to hide. He brought her a book from his own collection, a volume of poetry he thought she might enjoy. She accepted it like it was made of gold, running her fingers reverently over the cover. "No one has ever given me a gift before," she said softly. "Not like this. Then people have been fools." She looked up at him, and something passed between them in that moment, something warm and electric that made his breath catch. But then she turned away, setting the book carefully on her shelf. The first snow came early that year. Kellen woke to find his farm blanketed in white and immediately thought of Lyra alone in her cottage in the borderlands. He packed supplies into a rucksack and set out, ignoring the protests of his leg. The walk took longer than usual, the snow making the rough road treacherous. By the time he reached the orchard, his leg was on fire and he was breathing hard. But Lyra's cottage looked snug and warm, smoke rising from the chimney. She opened the door before he could knock, her eyes widening in surprise and concern. "Kellen, what are you doing here in this weather?" "I wanted to make sure you were all right. I am fine. I have weathered many winters here." But she pulled him inside quickly, shutting the cold out. "You should not have come all this way. Your leg must be hurting." He had not told her about the injury, but she was observant. He sank gratefully into the chair she offered by the fire. "It is an old wound. It bothers me sometimes. From the war." "Yes." She disappeared into her small kitchen and returned with a cup of hot tea and a concerned expression. "Let me see it." "Lyra, you do not have to, please. I have some knowledge of healing. My mother was a medicine woman before." She did not finish the sentence. Kellen rolled up his pant leg, revealing the ugly scar that ran from knee to ankle. Lyra knelt beside him, her touch surprisingly gentle as she examined the old injury. Her fingers probed carefully, and he winced when she found the places where the healing had been imperfect. "The bone did not set quite right," she said. "And the muscle was badly damaged. There is not much that can be done now, but I have a salve that might help with the pain. And I can show you exercises that will strengthen the surrounding muscles." She fetched a small pot of something that smelled of herbs and began massaging it into his leg. Her hands were warm and sure, and Kellen found himself acutely aware of her nearness, the way her dark hair fell forward as she concentrated, the small crease of concern between her brows. "Thank you," he said quietly. She looked up at him, her amber eyes soft. "You came all this way in the snow to check on me. This is little enough in return." The snow continued to fall, and by the time Lyra finished treating his leg, it was clear Kellen would not be returning home that day. She insisted he stay, offering him her bed while she would take the chair by the fire. "I will not turn you out of your own bed," Kellen protested. They argued about it good-naturedly until they agreed he would take the chair and she the bed, though neither was entirely happy with the arrangement. As night fell, they sat together by the fire, talking quietly about nothing and everything. Lyra told him stories of her childhood in the mountains, of the beauty and harshness of orc culture. Kellen spoke of his own youth in Millbrook, of the restlessness that had driven him to join the military. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "The war. I regret the killing. I regret the pain it caused on both sides, but I do not regret where it brought me." He met her eyes. "If I had not gone, I would not have come back, and I would not have met you." Color rose in her cheeks. She looked away, her fingers pleating the fabric of her skirt. "Kellen, I am sorry. I should not have said that." "No," she took a breath, seeming to gather courage. "No, I am glad you said it, because I feel the same way, these past weeks, having you here, talking with you. I have been happier than I can remember being in a very long time. Lyra." He reached out and took her hand. She looked down at their joined fingers, green skin against pale, and he felt her tremble slightly. "I care for you, very much. People will not understand. They already speak badly of you for being kind to me, if you were too." She could not seem to finish the sentence. "Let them talk. I have never lived my life according to the opinions of others." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I would never want to make your life harder. If my attention brings you trouble, it brings me joy," she interrupted fiercely. "For the first time in 6 years, I feel less alone. I wake up hoping you will visit. I find excuses to go into the village on market day just for the chance of seeing you." She met his eyes, vulnerable and brave. "I think I am falling in love with you, Kellen Harrow, and it terrifies me." His heart felt too large for his chest. "It terrifies me too, but I am falling in love with you as well." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. Their lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. Her hand came up to cup his face, her touch reverent and wondering. When they finally parted, both breathless, Lyra laughed shakily. "I never thought anyone would want to kiss me." "Then you have been surrounded by blind fools." He kissed her again, softer this time. "You are beautiful, Lyra, inside and out." She rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now? We figure it out together, one day at a time." They sat together by the fire until late into the night, sometimes talking, sometimes simply existing in comfortable silence. When Kellen finally dozed off in the chair, Lyra covered him with a blanket and kissed his forehead gently before retreating to her own bed. The snow lasted 3 days. 3 days of being snowbound together, learning each other's habits and rhythms. Kellen helped with her chores, splitting wood and tending to the animals she kept in a small barn behind the cottage. Lyra cooked meals that were surprisingly good, though she apologized for their simplicity. They read together from his book of poetry, Lyra sometimes stumbling over words she did not know, Kellen helping her sound them out. It was the happiest 3 days of Kellen's life. When the snow finally melted enough for travel, they were both reluctant to see him go. Lyra walked him to the road, her hand clasped in his. "Come back soon," she said. "As soon as I can." They kissed goodbye, and Kellen forced himself to walk away, though every step felt wrong. He glanced back once to see her still standing there, watching him go, and he raised a hand in farewell. The village was full of rumors when he returned. People had noticed his absence during the storm. Old Brennan made pointed comments about where he might have been. Kellen ignored them, but he knew the talk would only get worse. He visited Lyra every few days after that, sometimes staying over when the work was too much to finish in a day. Their relationship deepened, moving from tentative new love to something more solid and real. They were learning each other, the good and the bad, the habits that charmed and those that annoyed. Lyra sang while she worked, old orc ballads in a language Kellen did not understand but found beautiful anyway. She was meticulous about keeping things organized, nearly to the point of obsession. She had nightmares sometimes, waking with a gasp, and Kellen would hold her until she calmed. Kellen talked too much when he was nervous, a trait Lyra found endearing. He could not cook to save his life, burning even the simplest meals. He blamed himself for things outside his control, carrying guilt about the war that Lyra helped him slowly unpack. Winter deepened, and their love grew stronger. Kellen knew that what they had was special, rare. He also knew it could not remain secret forever. The confrontation came in early spring. Kellen was in the village buying supplies when a group of men cornered him outside the general store. Brennan was their spokesman, his face flushed with anger and righteousness. "We know you have been spending time with that orc woman," Brennan said. "It is not natural, Harrow, not right." "What I do on my own land and my own time is my business," Kellen replied evenly. "Not when it affects the whole village. We do not want orc lovers here." "Then perhaps I should leave." That gave them pause. Brennan had not expected him to call the bluff. "You would choose her over your own kind." "I would choose the woman I love over the opinions of bigots, yes." The word hung in the air between them. Love. He had said it publicly now, and there was no taking it back. The men muttered among themselves, some angry, others uncertain. "She has bewitched you," Brennan tried. "She has done no such thing. I came to care for her because she is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and good. All things you might consider aspiring to yourselves." Kellen picked up his supplies. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have somewhere to be." He pushed through the group, half expecting them to stop him physically. But they let him pass, too shocked by his defiance to react. Kellen did not look back as he left the village. He went straight to Lyra's cottage, finding her in the orchard pruning trees. She took one look at his face and set down her tools. "What happened?" He told her everything. She listened in silence, her expression growing more troubled with each word. When he finished, she turned away, her hands clenched into fists. "I knew this would happen," she said. "I knew they would turn on you eventually. Lyra, you should stop coming here. Go back to your farm, make peace with the village. Say I bewitched you, say whatever you need to say." "I will do no such thing. Kellen, you do not understand. They will drive you out. You will lose everything." "I understand perfectly." He came up behind her, gently turning her to face him. "And I do not care. My farm is just land. The village is just a place. But you, Lyra, you are everything." Tears spilled down her green cheeks. "I do not want to be the reason you lose your home." "You are not the reason. Their hate is the reason, their fear and ignorance." He wiped away her tears with his thumbs. "I was thinking. Your orchard is bigger than my farm. Your land is better. What if I moved here?" She stared at him. "You would leave your farm." "I would. I will. If you will have me." "Kellen, are you certain? This is not a small thing." "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He took a breath. "Marry me, Lyra. Let me stand beside you, not as a visitor but as your husband. Let us build a life together here on land we both tend. You cannot marry me. It is not legal. It is legal, actually. I looked into it. Interspecies marriages are allowed by kingdom law even if most people do not approve. We can go to the magistrate in Thornhill, have it done properly. He took her hands in his. I love you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to tend this orchard together and watch the seasons change and grow old knowing I chose to spend my life with the finest woman I ever met. Lyra was crying in earnest now, but she was also smiling. Yes. Yes. Of course, yes. They kissed there under the apple trees, the spring breeze carrying the scent of blossoms. Kellen felt a rightness settle into his bones, a sense of coming home more profound than any he had ever known. The next week they traveled to Thornhill, a larger town 3 days' ride away where people did not know them and might not care. The magistrate who performed the ceremony was old and indifferent, asking no questions as long as their coin was good. They exchanged vows in a dusty office with strangers as witnesses, and when it was done, Lyra was his wife. They spent 2 nights at an inn before heading back, enjoying the anonymity of a place where no one stared at Lyra or whispered about Kellen. They walked hand in hand through the market, bought supplies for the coming season, and acted like any other newlywed couple. Reality crashed back when they returned home. Kellen had posted a notice that his farm was for sale, and while there was interest, there was also fury from those who felt betrayed by his choice. Someone left a dead crow nailed to his door. He found his beehives tipped over, his bees scattered. He moved his essential belongings to Lyra's cottage and did not look back. I am sorry, Lyra said, watching him unpack his few possessions. I am sorry this has cost you so much. It has cost me nothing that mattered. He pulled her close. Stop apologizing for other people's choices. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Lyra had been alone so long that Kellen worried she might struggle with sharing her space, but instead she seemed to bloom with his presence. She smiled more, laughed more, sang her orc ballads with more joy than sorrow. Kellen threw himself into learning the orchard, studying under Lyra's patient instruction. His legs still troubled him, but the salves she made and the exercises she taught helped considerably. They worked side by side through the spring, pruning and planning for the future. Word of their marriage spread. Most people simply avoided them, but a few were actively hostile. Someone tried to poison their well, though they caught it in time. Kellen began carrying his old military sword when he went into the village for supplies. But there were also small, unexpected kindnesses. A young widow named Mercy, who had always been kind, slipped Lyra a jar of preserves at the market, whispering a congratulations before hurrying away. An old farmer who lived even farther out than they did stopped by one day to offer advice on dealing with aphids, speaking to Lyra with careful respect. Not everyone is terrible, Lyra said that evening, clearly heartened by these small gestures. No. Most people are just scared of what they do not understand. Some are willing to learn. Summer came, and the orchard flourished under their combined care. They added 3 new beehives from Kellen's old farm, and the bees thrived among the apple blossoms. They worked from dawn until dusk, falling into bed exhausted but content. In quiet moments, Lyra would talk about her dreams for the orchard, the possibility of expanding, of perhaps growing other fruits. Kellen encouraged her, adding his own ideas, the 2 of them planning a future together. I never thought I could have this, Lyra confessed one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset. A home, a partner, a life that was mine to build, After my clan scattered, after all the years alone, I thought this was impossible for someone like me. You deserve this. You deserve happiness and love and every good thing." She leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. "I know that now. You taught me that." The real trouble came in late summer. A group of young men from the village, drunk and angry, rode out to the orchard one night with torches. Kellen heard them coming and woke Lyra immediately. "Stay inside," he commanded, grabbing his sword. "No." She was already moving, pulling on her clothes. "This is my home too." They faced the mob together, Kellen with his sword drawn, Lyra with an axe she used for splitting wood. The young men pulled up short, perhaps not expecting resistance, certainly not expecting Lyra's fierce expression or the way she held her weapon with obvious expertise. "Go home," Kellen said quietly. "This is not worth what will happen if you try this." "You are a traitor," one of them spat. "Marrying a greenskin monster." "I married a woman I love. You are the ones acting like monsters." The leader, a boy Kellen recognized as Brennan's son, raised his torch. "We will burn you out, orc lover." "You will try," Lyra said, her voice carrying a hardness Kellen had never heard before. "But I was trained as a warrior before you were born, boy. I have killed to defend my life before. I will do so again if forced." The tension stretched taut. Kellen could see the moment the boy realized they were serious, that this would not be the easy intimidation he had imagined. The other young men were already backing away, suddenly sober. "This is not over," Brennan's son said, but he turned his horse. "Yes, it is," Kellen replied. "Come back here with violence in mind, and I will defend my wife and my home with everything I have. I served 5 years in the military. I have killed before too. Do not test me." The mob retreated, but the threat hung heavy in the air. Kellen and Lyra spent the rest of the night awake, watching for any sign of return. By dawn, they were exhausted and rattled. "We should have known this would happen," Lyra said. "We cannot live here in peace. We can and we will, but we need help." Kellen made a decision. "I am riding to Thornhill today to speak with the magistrate. What they tried last night was illegal. We have the law on our side, even if we do not have popular opinion." "Kellen, the magistrate will not care about an orc woman and her husband." "Maybe not. But he will care about maintaining order and enforcing kingdom law. Attempted arson is serious." He rode out that morning, pushing hard to make the trip quickly. The magistrate in Thornhill listened to his story with narrowed eyes, then sent 2 of his officers back with Kellen to investigate. The presence of official law enforcement changed the dynamic immediately. Brennan's son and his friends were arrested after the officers found evidence of their attempt, scorch marks on the road where they had lit their torches. The magistrate himself visited a week later to make it clear that any further harassment would result in serious consequences. He spoke bluntly to the village leaders, reminding them that kingdom law protected all citizens, orc and human alike, and that interfering with a legal marriage or attempting violence against landowners would not be tolerated. It was not perfect. There were still mutterings, still people who crossed the road to avoid them. But the open hostility lessened. The threat of legal consequences and the magistrate's clear stance gave cover to those who had been inclined to kindness but were afraid to show it. Slowly, things began to change. Mercy the widow visited openly now, bringing her young daughter to see the orchard. The old farmer came by more often, sometimes just to talk, treating them like neighbors. A few others followed, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. "You are good people," Mercy said one afternoon, watching her daughter pick apples under Lyra's patient supervision. "I do not care what anyone says. You work hard, you are kind, you hurt no one. That is what matters." Lyra's eyes shone with tears. "Thank you. You do not know what it means to hear that." I think I do, Mercy replied gently. I was alone for a long time after my husband died. I know what it is like to feel shut out. Autumn came, and the orchard yielded its best harvest yet. Kellen and Lyra worked together to pick the fruit, press cider, and prepare preserves. They sold their goods at the market, and while some people still refused to buy from them, others did so openly now, praising the quality of their products. On a crisp October morning, Lyra announced she was pregnant. Kellen felt the world tilt. You are certain? I am certain. The healers in Thornhill confirmed it yesterday when I went for supplies. She looked nervous, searching his face. I know we have not talked about children. I know this complicates things. Complicates things, he laughed, a sound of pure joy, and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. Lyra, this is wonderful. This is everything. She clung to him, laughing and crying at once. You are happy. I am beyond happy. We are going to have a child. Our child. They held each other for a long time, both thinking about what this meant, the life they were creating not just for themselves but for the future. A child of two worlds, human and orc, a bridge between peoples. I am frightened, Lyra admitted. What if people treat our child the way they treated me? What if our baby suffers because of who their parents are? Then we will do what we are already doing. We will love them fiercely, teach them to be strong, and create a home where they are safe and valued. And we will change minds one person at a time until the world is better than it was. You make it sound possible. It is possible. Look how far we have already come. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lyra remained strong throughout, working the orchard almost until her delivery. The healer from Thornhill agreed to attend the birth. A kindly woman named Iris, who had delivered hundreds of babies and treated Lyra with matter-of-fact compassion. Their daughter was born on a cold March morning as the orchard was just beginning to bud. She had green-tinged skin softer than her mother's, tiny tusks that would likely grow more prominent as she aged, and her father's blue eyes. She was perfect. What should we name her? Kellen asked, holding his daughter with the careful reverence of a new father. I thought perhaps Margaret, Lyra said. After your mother. Kellen looked at his wife in surprise. You would do that. Your mother died when you were young, and I know you miss her. I would honor her memory. Margaret Harrow Vornath, Kellen said softly, trying it out. It suits her. The baby grasped his finger with surprising strength, and Kellen felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. This tiny person was his and Lyra's, a testament to their love and their determination to build something good despite the opposition. Word of the baby's birth spread quickly. Some people responded with the expected disgust, talking about mongrels and abominations. But others surprised them. Mercy came to visit with gifts for the baby and an offer to help. The old farmer stopped by with a hand-carved cradle. Even the magistrate sent a note of congratulations. The world had not changed completely. There was still prejudice, still fear, still people who would never accept their family. But there were also allies, friends, people who chose love over hate. And in their little orchard in the borderlands, Kellen and Lyra built a life that was rich with meaning. They watched Margaret grow through that first year, marveling at every milestone. She had her mother's determination and her father's curiosity, constantly exploring everything within reach. When she laughed, which was often, it sounded like music. On the anniversary of their wedding, Kellen and Lyra stood together in the orchard under the blooming trees, Margaret asleep in her mother's arms. They had weathered so much in their time together, and there would surely be challenges ahead. But they faced the future together, united, a family. You ever regret it? Lyra asked quietly. Everything you gave up? Not for one moment. Kellen kissed her softly. You and Margaret are my life now, this orchard, this home, this family we have built together. I would not trade it for anything. I love you, Kellen Harrow. And I love you, Lyra Vornath. Always. They stood together as the sun set over their orchard, bathing everything in golden light. In the distance, they could see smoke rising from the village, hear the faint sounds of evening settling in. But here, in their little corner of the world, there was peace. The years ahead would bring their own trials and triumphs. Margaret would grow strong and proud, secure in the love of her parents. The orchard would continue to flourish, becoming known throughout the region for its exceptional fruit. Slowly, very slowly, attitudes would begin to shift as people saw their family not as a threat, but as neighbors, as friends, as simply people trying to live good lives. More children would come, 2 sons who would help work the orchard and carry on the legacy their parents built. The cottage would be expanded to accommodate the growing family. Friendships would deepen with those brave enough to cross the invisible line society had drawn, but all of that lay in the future. For now, there was this moment, this perfect evening, with his wife and daughter beside him and the orchard spreading around them like a promise kept. Kellen held his family close and thought about the loveliest orc woman who had sat alone and unclaimed at a festival, and how he had been blessed to be the one man who reached her. It had not been easy. Love worth having never was. But as he looked at Lyra's face, at the contentment there and the joy and the deep abiding love, he knew with absolute certainty that every struggle had been worth it. They had found each other across the divide of fear and prejudice, and together they had built something beautiful. That was enough. That was everything. The orchard would bloom again next spring as it always did. Their children would grow and learn and find their own paths. The world would continue to change, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. But this family, forged in the face of opposition and sustained by fierce devotion, would endure. In the gathering twilight, with the first stars beginning to appear overhead, Kellen Harrow held his wife and daughter and felt the weight of perfect happiness. He had been a soldier, a farmer, and a man searching for meaning. Now he was a husband, a father, and a man who had found his purpose. The loveliest orc woman for miles had sat unclaimed and alone at a festival years ago. But she was alone no longer, and neither was he. Together, they had created a life and a love that would last all their days, a testament to the simple truth that what matters most is not what others think, but who you choose to stand beside when the world grows dark. And as the night closed in around them, warm and gentle and full of promise, they stood together under the stars, exactly where they belonged.